Hi, my name is Emmanuel Medhani, and I'm creating this video to go over a new PC build, or my experience with a new PC build. So for context, I own a consulting business named Parsimony, where I provide data analysis, statistics, and research services, mostly to people in education, but then in other businesses as well. I've only built a computer once. The first computer I built was in 2012, and it went pretty well. All the parts continue to work. It does a great job for most of what I do for my business. I built that with that has a i7-3930K processor, and for the most part, it does everything I still need it to do. But towards the end of the year, I thought, well, why not decrease my tax burden and buy a new computer? And so I thought I'd build one again for the second time. So this video is where I'll be showing how I'm doing that. You can see the parts that I got here behind me. And for more context, my goal is to do more work in the areas of machine learning and deep learning. And so I wanted to build a PC that I could get to start doing that work, but then I could upgrade later on. And so I'll be going over the parts that I chose, and then I will be recording myself building it. And then hopefully, if all goes well at the end, I will turn it on and you will see it on. Here goes. So for this build, I got a Ryzen 7 3700X CPU, third generation. It's got 8 cores and 16 threads. I didn't go all out on the CPU because for the machine learning and deep learning projects, most of the heavy lifting in terms of the analysis and number crunching is done by the GPU. And so I thought I'd save a little bit of money and still get a nice CPU. A lot of the work that I do for my consulting, the types of analysis that I'm doing, are done by the CPU. So this will be improvement over my old one that is from 2012. So and that is going to be going into this Asus X570-e ROG Strix motherboard. It has 2 M2 slots, so I'll be using NVMe M2 storage sticks for that. And so it doesn't have a lot of PCIe lanes, which, as I understand it, is helpful. Having more is helpful for sending data back and forth between like the CPU and the memory, and the from the storage to the CPU and to the graphics card. And so, but I did a little bit of research, and for the kind of data that I'll be working with, even when I am doing the deep learning projects, I'll be starting out small, so I'm not too worried about having a problem there. And if I do have a problem, I can use cloud computing. I have an Azure subscription, so I could do that for more serious projects, or eventually upgrade. For the GPU or the video card here, I've got a Asus RTX 2060. It has 6 gigabytes of RAM. And again, this is going to be sufficient for the kinds of projects that I'll be working on to begin with. It's not relevant for most of my actual client work because, as I said, most of that's happening with the CPU anyway. But this was pretty affordable. It was, I think it's like $380. I looked for a higher end one. There's a RTX 3090 that's got like 24 gigabytes of RAM, which would be nice to be able to do some bigger projects, maybe with deep learning in like video or large audio files and things like that, but you know, it's not really necessary. And when I was looking for the higher end cards, they were really hard to come by right now, and if you could find them, you'd have to pay double what you should actually pay, and so I couldn't really justify that, especially for now. Let's see here. And then for cooling the CPU, I got this H100, this Corsair Hydro Series H100 RGB Platinum SE. I think that'll be nice. I will have 2 additional fans that I bought that will be on the other side of it to do what's called a push-pull airflow for the radiator. I don't know much. All of this stuff I've just sort of learned by looking up online. And so I'll be doing that with this, and to accompany that, of course, as I said, you know, some extra fans here, and those will all be going into this Corsair Crystal 680X RGB case. As I understand it, it's not the best for airflow, but I think it looks nice, and for the kinds of stuff that I'll be doing, the airflow I don't think will be a huge impediment. For memory, I've got 32 gigabytes and 2 16 gig sticks of Corsair Vengeance Pro RGB. Again, you don't need the RGB. I don't need the RGB, but I saw videos of this case decked out with different lights and stuff, and it's like, okay, well, you know, might as well do that because I think it looks nice. For storage, I've got 2 M2 cards. One of them is a 2 terabyte 970 Evo Plus. That'll be used for storage, where I'll be saving all my client projects. And I want to be able to share that storage between 2 operating systems. One will be Microsoft Windows Professional, and then the other will be Ubuntu. And so I want to set up a dual boot OS setup. And I will be putting both of those operating systems on this 1 terabyte 860 Samsung 860 Evo M2 card, and then whatever extra storage I'll have here, I'll share between them also. The reason I'm putting Ubuntu on there is because, as I understand it, the typical software stack for machine learning and deep learning play nicely with Linux distributions, more nicely than they do with Windows. And you know, given that this will be my first sort of deep dive into these techniques, I don't really want to have to be messing around with a lot of setup and problems. What I might do is set up virtualization for the Ubuntu setup, so that I can take a snapshot, and in case something goes wrong in the future, I can revert back to it, because I don't want to take the trouble of setting that all up with all of the software needed for this, and then have some file get corrupted or something, and then, you know, have to do it all over again. I'm not really trying to do that. Let's see. Then the last thing is the power supply unit. I picked this up at Micro Center. I have a Micro Center that I go to. I really like Micro Center. Those people there know what they're talking about. In my experience, more so than like places like Best Buy. And so I found this PSU online through Micro Center. It's made by a company called MainGear. Did some background research. They build computers, and they build PCs. And there wasn't a lot of information about this, but the reviews that I did find from people that had used it really liked it. They gave it rave reviews, and it was $250 relative to like $400 for the same wattage power supply unit. I got 1200 here. It's overkill for what I've got set up here, but when I upgrade to a video card that's more power hungry, or in the event that I upgrade to 2 video cards, probably a little bit more far-fetched than, you know, they'll be coming in the future, distant future, but this would be able to handle it. And that is everything in terms of the parts. So I will start building.
I'm going to leave everything as it is and then click on Start button to burn the ISO image into the pen drive. Sit back and relax, the process will take some time depending on writing speeds of your pen drive.
So the PC is up and running now. I'm actually on it when I'm recording. I installed Windows and Ubuntu with a dual boot setup. But there are a couple things I wanted to describe in case anybody is building a similar PC and experiences the same issue. So when I went to go turn on the computer after everything was set up, it didn't turn on. But it was clear the motherboard was getting power because there are some lights on the motherboard that were lighting up. And I'll just drag this screen over here. So here's the motherboard, this Asus ROG X570-e, and these are RGB lights here that change different colors. And these three lights or these three sections of the motherboard were on and were changing color. And so it was clear that the motherboard was getting power, but every time I pressed the power button on the case, I'd get a click and nothing else happened. And so I went on forums, was looking up solutions, trying different things, burned about an hour and a half and nothing worked, and I just threw in the towel because this is for my it's a PC for my business, and I didn't really want to turn this into a case to be a detective. That's not what I'm trying to do. And so I took it to Micro Center in St. Louis Park, which is where I bought most of the components for this PC. And they took a look at it, and at first they couldn't figure out what was wrong, which made me feel good because I felt like they said that I did everything that I was supposed to do. Everything looked like it was set up correctly. And so I was, ready to say, well, okay, why don't you guys just, rebuild this thing if you have to or whatever. I'll give it to you, tell me what it costs and just pay for it at this point. But then the guy behind the counter asked somebody else, and that guy came over. They tried a couple more things, and then upon closer look, he discovered that the issue was that there's this the ATX cable, and I'll pull that over here, that that came with my power supply unit. So the motherboard requires for its main power 24 pins. And the cable that I had is like this. There's 20 together, and then there's 4 separate. I guess because some older motherboards only require 20. But unlike this cable, which has arrows and shows the way it's supposed to be connected, mine does not. The MainGear power supply unit that I got. So I inadvertently plugged this in the wrong direction. So imagine if you sort of rotated this one where this side is on this side and then plugged it in, and that was the problem. So he simply pulled this out, plugged it in the right way, and he pressed the button and everything turned on. So that was a very nice, simple fix, and those guys were great. They didn't even charge me for it. It didn't take very long. I was there for maybe 8 minutes or so. But that's another reason why I really like Micro Center. They really know their stuff, and it's just exceptional customer service every time I've been there. But that was the issue, and so I wonder if a lot of the people that were talking about this issue where this motherboard was lighting up but pressing the power button wasn't doing anything, simply how many of them had just that issue. And so it is working now. It's all set up, and as you can see, I've already set up the operating systems. I can create another video for how I set up the operating system. That was a little funny because this case doesn't have a DVD drive, and so I had to boot from the USB, and then I had some booting issues with the dual boot setup where it was skipping the main menu, where it asked me which operating system I wanted to go into, and so that was a whole other thing. But it works, and this is the final PC here. and I am looking forward to it. I've already been doing client work on it, and I haven't installed many apps on or applications on the Linux system. I've set up all of the applications that I use for my business on the Windows operating system, but my next thing is going to be to use an external drive to back up the both partitions that have both operating systems, so that in the event of some sort of catastrophic failure, I can just re-image new drives and start up without having to install all the software over again. So that's it. I hope you like this video. Don't bother to like or dislike or whatever, because this is not a thing for me. I just thought it'd be helpful potentially for anybody that's building something like this, and then also to know that this is only the second time I've done this, and in both cases I was able to successfully do it. I don't have a background in building PCs, but it doesn't take that much work as long as you make sure that the components work together, and there are websites that help you do that. Okay, thank you.